All right, let's talk about the so-called Epstein Files. There is so much noise out there, so much confusion. So in the next few minutes, we're going to cut right through it. We're sticking to the facts from the actual source documents to give you a clear, straightforward understanding of what these files are, who's involved, and why they're still such a big deal.
So let's start with the most basic question, because it's the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. What exactly are these files that everyone keeps talking about?
First up, we need a really solid definition. It's the only way we can start to separate what's actually fact from all the speculation that's swirling around this case.
Okay, this is critical to understand. This isn't one single secret folder that someone just opened up. A much better way to think of it is like a huge, sprawling library. It's a whole mosaic of information that's been gathered over many years from countless different court cases and investigations.
So what's inside this library? Well, it's a real mix. You've got formal court records, you've got those now infamous private jet flight logs, and his personal contact books. But maybe the most powerful parts are the sworn depositions and testimonies from victims and witnesses. Each piece of this gives us another part of the story.
To really get a grip on what these documents mean, we have to understand the people at the very center of them. So let's take a look at the two key figures whose actions are detailed all throughout these files.
And at the center of it all, of course, is Jeffrey Epstein. Publicly, he had this image of a super-connected, powerful financier who is tied to the global elite. But behind that facade, what the files detail are these incredibly disturbing allegations that he was running a sophisticated sex trafficking operation for years.
And then you have Ghislaine Maxwell. The documents and later prosecutors showed she wasn't just some associate, she was a key facilitator in the whole operation. Her conviction in 2021 for sex trafficking really cemented her central role in recruiting and grooming young victims for Epstein.
You know, this timeline really shows what a long and winding legal road this has been. It all started with those initial investigations way back in the mid-2000s. But the real flashpoint, the thing that caused a huge public outcry, was that 2008 federal plea deal, which just seemed shockingly lenient to a lot of people. That controversy just simmered for years, leading all the way up to Epstein's rearrest and his death in 2019. And then, finally, that landmark conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell in 2021.
All right, now let's actually go inside the documents themselves. This is where we have to be super clear about what is a documented fact versus what is just speculation.
You know, a massive portion of these files is made up of victim and witness testimonies. These are the powerful human accounts that describe the alleged methods of how people were recruited and coerced. They provide the absolutely essential human context for all the other data points, like the flight logs and the contact lists.
And this brings us to a really important point that legal experts stress over and over again. It is so easy to see a name on a flight log and just assume guilt. But legally, that's just not how it works. Appearing in one of these documents is a data point, for sure, but it is not automatic proof of wrongdoing. Context is absolutely everything.
The release and all the discussion around these files have had these massive ripple effects, right? They've created a public and legal impact that goes way, way beyond the individuals who are directly involved. The real catalyst for this whole public firestorm was the year 2008. That controversial plea deal Epstein got was seen by so many people as a total failure of the justice system. It created this perception that if you had enough wealth and influence, you could get a totally different standard of accountability. And that, right there, lit the fuse of public anger. And that initial outrage, it sparked this incredible chain reaction. It led directly to people demanding reform from prosecutors, which in turn gave a much bigger platform to survivors. All of this put a much-needed national spotlight on victims' rights, and it was all a direct consequence of that feeling of injustice back in 2008.
This brings us to a very real and current debate that we're all grappling with. As more of these documents get unsealed, we're trying to navigate this really difficult balance. On one side, you have this powerful argument for transparency and the public's right to know. But on the other, you have the very serious risk of damaging the reputations of people who might be named but have never actually been charged with a crime.
So after all the headlines and all this time, why does this case still matter so much? Well, it's because it's become symbolic of these much larger, much more difficult questions about power, justice, and accountability in our society.
When you really step back, the significance is just so clear. This case forces us to have a conversation about power, wealth, and justice. It shows how influence can be used to hide in plain sight and to try and escape accountability. But it also powerfully demonstrates the incredible impact of brave investigative journalism. And, maybe most of all,
the absolutely critical, society-changing role of survivor advocacy.
And that really leaves us with this final, essential question that goes way beyond any one person. It's a question about the very foundation of our justice system. When power and influence can insulate individuals from accountability, what is the true cost that the rest of society is forced to pay?